Welcome to Timber&Terra. I'm Glenn, and I'm out here in the woods before the rain, and I'll explain what that means to me here in a bit, collecting saw logs. So this is a saw log. These are mostly fir, has some spruce mixed in. If you watch me during the wintertime, that's when I cut almost all of these. A lot of them I showed on video, maybe not all of them, but I did cut all of them. You just may not have witnessed all of them. So the rain, this is an area where, again, you're probably familiar with. If you've watched the channel, down that way is the first corduroy road that I did. You can see the ground here is sort of moist. We've had a really good dry spell, probably one that we haven't had in a couple of years, firewood. So down there around the corner is where that corduroy road is. That road up there is one that I did some work to. Let's just run up there real quickly. This one I did last summer. I thought we had a dry spell in the fall to try to top dress it with some of the gravel. You see the rocks and sand there. With limited success, but over the winter time and in the summer it's really firmed up nicely. But it is really wet soil. You can see a little wet spot there, wet spot there. So this is a prime to just sort of top dress it with something, probably just my native fill, which I will probably also get to here in a second, what I mean by that. But this dry spell is ending tomorrow, so I basically have one full working day to do what I can in the woods before the roads become impassable again. So we're only expected to get about an inch, maybe an inch and a half of rain, which may not seem a lot, but for at least my woods out here, it makes a world of difference for these woods roads, especially the ones that I haven't really done much improvement to. You can see here, I had intended on putting a corduroy road here. I have the rails down. You know, some of them have sunk into the mud. But for a bunch of reasons, which I will go over when I video top dressing the corduroy road, I don't think I'm going to do that. For me, it's just not worth the time. So up there, if I was to go up there now, even though it's relatively dry, I think I would cause a problem, which is why you saw me make this sharp turn, which is not what I had intended when I laid these roads out. But since I don't have good access around this sort of loop, I didn't have much of a choice. It was either drive in here, put the tractor in the mud, and then back up there and make the turn, or make the turn empty, and just leave the trailer in the mud. And the trailer wheels, the trailer's empty pretty much, so it's relatively light, and the flotation tires are probably at least as good as the tractor tires. So my plan now is to go through all the woods roads that are really inaccessible normally in wet weather. Collect these fir logs. I also have a bunch of firewood, such as the one I pointed out there, that I'm not too concerned. If I'm able to get that in the next day, that's fine. If it has to wait, that's fine too, because I'm not in dire need of firewood. I have plenty here for this coming winter. So this pond area you might be familiar with. When we drive across it, you'll see that the ford, that little trickle of water over the road, is not nearly what it normally is, which is the indication of the dry weather we've had. So this video is being made at the same time. I have like 2 or 3 others in the works, but they're all somewhat related. This area here you may have seen a couple videos of. One, me getting the dump truck stuck here with my first load of gravel I ever hauled, trying to tailgate it up this hill. I have some others too related to the excavators up there where my borrow pit, I'm scraping the topsoil off, so I'm basically ready to sort of steal some dirt there to top dress some of the woods roads, such as the one that we rode over and I mentioned earlier. But for now, I'm just trying to get into the woods and get the stuff out while it's dry enough. So there's a couple piles of saw logs up there in the field that I'm not worried about because I can access those with this road. So just going to go into the woods. I think there's just one road that I have material sort of left and right, pick up those things, and then head back to the house. So you may see some of these shorter, smaller material sort of nearby that I'm ignoring because these were cut for the purpose of a corduroy road. I don't know, I still may try to put those on the road. I don't have a whole lot left, but yeah, for the most part these will probably stay behind, and who knows what will happen to them. I think that's the last of the logs that I know of. Now I know I've forgotten one, two, several. I just don't know where they are, but I'm sure I forgot some because I always do. So, but for now, unless I find some in the little short track out, which is just here, take a right, and you can see the opening the field into that road in the field that I made. So we'll head our way back to the house. So these are the logs, I think, from the woods. As I mentioned, I have a fair amount to get, probably twice this amount to get basically from the field out back. The other thing is I have these pasture spruce, which I need to bring, which is just down the road a piece. I'm guessing I can do those probably 2 trips with a trailer with the new stake pockets, which you can see sort of poking over the doghouse. Doghouse is just sitting there, it's not being used. Well, there it is, first load of logs, so I didn't know really what to expect weight-wise. I probably could put some more on, but I thought for the first time I just load it with, I'm comfortable with a light load, and if I can put more on the next time or two, I will. So I still have a few more 16 footers and the rest of it's 10 footers, so it'll probably take me at least 2 more trips. It's nice to have some weight on here. I'm not so reliant on the stabilizers to keep me stabilized left to right, because I need to park close because of the reach of that 14-foot boom. I notice here I have a bit of a low tire. Alright, well, we'll see how this goes and unload it at the other end. Well, that's load number one. The other probably two will be just like it, so I won't video that. So when I back up and sort of pull out, then I'll just sort of scrape that bark off into the grass, is where he said. So don't want that flying all over the road. Finally, after I guess a couple years now, I guess it probably showed there with the condition of some of those logs, this pile is gone. This one here I set aside because I don't know what I was thinking when I included it in this pile, but it is firewood. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I'm thinking it was a log, but it ain't. It is no log. So as you probably noticed, a little lopsided there. So before I strap it down, I'll have the loader on the other side and take that big one, sort of center it, even the pile up a bit. It's just so hard to see, and generally speaking, I am shy on this side, so I was trying extra hard to put a lot over there, and I overdid it. So then the next thing with these logs is this pile here I'm going to stack over here. Now that I have the skids empty, I have a couple piles of 16-foot logs in the field to get, and then they'll sit here, hopefully not too long, until I plan to go deliver them to the concentration yard for sale, which is about an hour-and-a-half ride for me. So this is the lumber that resulted from the pasture spruce that I had cut actually over the last year or so. I'll go over the contents of that lumber here in a bit, but regarding the saw logs, I ended up not recording anything more of the saw logs. I hired a trucker to come take the logs to the sawmill for him. It was about a 3-hour round trip, and he got $300 for that. About 2,400 board feet was the footage that I was paid. And for me, it was worth it to pay the logger rather than me doing the 2 trips, which it would have taken for me. So it would have been close to 6 hours of my time. So on with the video regarding the pasture spruce lumber. So I ended up using 2 trailers, one because I had them, and this is basically the leftovers, you know, a lot of the 2x4s, 2x6s. My only purpose in this really was these 3x7s. I've explained a bit more of that in videos related to cutting pasture spruce, so I'm not going to go over a lot of the detail again. But these were in several different piles, and while I was hauling this one back to the house, he was able to consolidate these. You know, weight-wise, space-wise, we could have fit it on there, but it just would have seemed it was more problem than it was worth. So it's good to have 2 trailers anyhow, because the only thing I'm going to pile out here at the site of cabins are these 3x7s, which are going to be the exposed roof rafters and the exposed floor joists. All this other miscellaneous stuff I'm going to put back at the house with my other material of a similar dimension. So with the pasture spruce, it's not a commercially viable log, and when I come across some good examples of that as we sticker this, then I'll explain that a bit. So this seemed to be the most sort of out of the way place. I have a woods road there. I travel through there to another woods road there. You know, one cabin site there is where that green ribbon is. This is a potential site for a drilled well. So this just seemed to be out of the way. It's not ideal because it doesn't have direct access to the west wind, which is that way, the prevailing wind. But it is going to get sun a good part of the time, since that's also west. So this is all sunny. So I'm not too worried about it drying out too slowly. So now to sticker these, I don't worry about it necessarily being level, although that's the easiest. That really just needs to be flat. You just don't want a lot of waves. You don't want it, you know, curved that way or twisted. So this is pretty level. Just use the 4-foot level to get it level front to back. So that was the worst drop there at the end. So there's an extra block here in the center. I just you know, use some 2x6s. If this was going to be a longer term storage, I'd probably use pressure treated, because eventually these will probably rot because they'll be almost constantly wet from the wicking of the concrete. And it's not going to be perfect, because these are not exactly 2 inches. This one's a bit more than 2 inches, but I have some more. So this will be fine for that. It's just a tiny gap. This one, tiny gap the other way. This one here, I'll probably cut a 1-inch piece, because this would be too much to lift that up. So the ones that stick up a little bit proud, they're going to have a bit more weight, and they'll just sort of sink into the ground further than the adjacent ones. In my experience with this method, has worked well. Never had any you know, warped or deformed lumber because of how it was stickered. So I'm just going to use what's worked for me. This is road fabric. Just laid it down on the grass. I'll probably have two sections here, 2 bundles, 2 tiers, whatever you want to call them, of 16 foot. And then the 10 foot will be over here. So I haven't cut that yet. I'll cut it when I'm done. So then with the blocking up to level, I just put you know, a green piece of 2x6 across. There's going to be very little weight in the middle, because that's only, you know, 16 inches or so to span. So probably would be too much to just put a sticker down there, because that's a little bit weak. But 2x6, 2x4 probably would have been fine. The other thing to mention is spacing. So because these are 3 inches thick, I'm not worried too much about them bending. The spacing between the stickers is going to be 4 feet. I think if it's boards, you know, 1-inch boards, you know, 2x, I think I've done 32 inches, but I might have done 4 feet in the past. I just don't know. If it was high quality, like hardwood lumber, probably every 2 feet would be best to minimize any chance of distortion. So here's a first look at some of these. Like this one here, this is perfectly good lumber. The knots are not too big, a lot of straight grain. This is more like a pasture spruce, although even this one I don't think is too bad. But you're going to see a lot of knots, larger ones. These are about 1 inch in diameter. A lot of grain that swirls about, you know, and the grain can be a weak spot. There's probably going to be some more extreme examples of that I'll show as we get into this. So that little bit of lumber there was very close to the capacity of my tractor. I could feel the back end was a little bit light. So I have one more lift of 16 foot, which I'm going to have to bring the trailer over. Or we just take a couple tiers of that off onto the forks. The 10-foot stuff on the other side should be easy enough to pick up. This is a good example of what a lot of pasture spruce will provide. A lot of close, large knots. Particularly in the middle of the span, this is probably not one that I would use for any sort of weight-bearing application. Another couple of examples. Some of these logs are not the straightest, so it ends up with quite a bit of wane, but there's a lot of knots concentrated there. You can see here, just knots, a lot of swirly grain. So these two here would not be good for structural applications. But one like this probably would be. I mean, you have a little bit towards the end here that might not be questionable, but the rest of this I think would be fine. Alright, now I think I'm going to try to get what I can from that tier over there rather than bring the trailer over here, because everything else on the trailer I can easily bring over with the tractor, so there's no sense putting the trailer in the way just for that, that one stack. Well, there it is. It goes quick when the pieces are big, but yeah, they get a little bit heavy. There was one log, I think, although the pieces from it are scattered, but it was discolored like this. It was probably a little on the rotten side. It was very light compared to the others, maybe this one. But it also had a bunch of big knots, so for a number of reasons this wouldn't be structural anyhow. 72 pieces. All right, so over here will be the 10-footers. The process is going to be the same, so I'm not going to film it. We'll come back after that's all done. This project is essentially complete, which will lead to the beginning of another small project, which will be long, tedious, and boring, so it's not film worthy. So it's probably easy to tell that these piles are not all level, sort of level with the earth. I think that 16-foot one is actually the closest one to actual level. This one you can see sort of slopes downhill with respect to that one. But I don't care what the level is so much as long as it's flat. So whatever the pitch was on this, say this side, as long as the pitch on the other side is the same, it can go downhill as long as it doesn't twist, as long as I don't have a corner higher than the other. That's really my biggest concern. It can be tilt this way as long as it's flat. It can tilt this way as long as it's flat. For the most part, I think the crosses are pretty much level. It's just they might pitch up or down lengthwise. But they sit off the ground plenty, plenty of room for airflow. And I've had good luck, you know, and I've taken these apart even after the piles have set on some sort of a tarp or road fabric like this. You know, for 5 or 10 years, even the bottom pieces look as good as new. They will be a little bit sort of golden, not this white, but the outsides will turn gray, sort of the same color as the ends that are exposed to the sun. So I have stickers on the top here. I'm going to get some tin. Hopefully I can find some used tin locally. That can have holes in it, you know, screw holes. It can have, you know, punctures. That's not a big deal. The primary purpose of covering this is not so much the rain, which you might think. It's really the sun. Because if I left this exposed, it's going to dry so quickly and so unevenly. It's going to warp, twist, bow. If it wasn't for the sun, the rain wouldn't be a big deal. This will still dry out even if it's exposed to rain. That's not a big deal. Because the rain doesn't penetrate really just superficially. And it dries very quickly when it stops raining. So it's really the sun. The other thing I want to do, so I'm going to put roofing on here, some sort of tin, and then some sort of a weight. I have several of these. These are, I think, 2 inches thick, 8 by 16, I think is the dimension of these concrete blocks. They're relatively inexpensive. They're pretty heavy. So I'll hold the tin down with that, as well as provide some weight. You know, these ones here on the bottom have plenty of weight to encourage them to dry flat and straight. The ones near the top here, not so much, particularly without any weight. Granted, just a handful of these blocks is not going to be the same amount of weight as, say, half of this whole pile. But it provides something. So another look at some of these. You know, this one here has discoloration. It was a lot lighter, so this is probably punky, on the verge of rotting. It's not going to be good for structural anyhow, because you can see the grains just go in all different directions. Lots of large knots, similar here. But one like this, you can see here's the pith. So this is the center of the tree, which is, you know, when the tree was young, any branches were real small, like that knot, maybe a 1/4 of an inch. The bottom side probably looks completely different, because here, like over here, is that much more growth. It's probably another 8 or 10 years of life of the tree. This one here is probably another one that's not going to be good structurally. This one I think is fine. This one's fine. Again, they can be completely different on one side to the other. So when I go to use them, I'll have to look at both sides. The other small project that this leads to is sort of all the odds and ends. So this material that I brought to the Sawyer, this was a cherry, black cherry tree that I cut down. And I said, well, this is too good for firewood, so it does have a sort of a big branch. So I don't know what it looks like. I haven't seen what that looks like. It may be ugly, it may be attractive. Who knows what that grain character looks like. So I just had this cut into 2-inch live edges on both sides. just so I have, you know, a lot of choices as to what this could be. Could be end tables, coffee table, any sort of other table, or you could trim up the sides and, you know, make you know, some other kind of furniture or dresser drawers or something. Here I had two 16-foot poplar logs that I had sawn into 1-inch lumber. I use the poplar for a number of different applications. I'm thinking most of it's going to be used for exterior siding, either side of a board and batten or just vertical siding, which I've had very good luck with in the past. It looks good. Again, it will sort of weather to the same sort of gray. But as long as it can dry out, I've never had an issue with it rotting or anything like that. So that's what these are. These two, basically one log and the other log, I'm guessing. So these two piles here are what's left over from the 10-foot material. So whenever he could not make the 3x7, which was my primary product, whenever he couldn't make that, he'd look for, you know, 2x6. In fact, there's probably one 2x8, a couple 2x8s, and a bunch of 2x4s, and again a bunch of 1-inch. You know, just trying to utilize the log to get as much usable material out as he can, which is what I asked him to do, and I'm sure he'd do that anyhow. So that's what these two piles are. Some leftover stickers. The other end of these poplar boards, and this is a relatively clear log, so I'm sure this is really nice lumber. Same sort of thing here with the 16-foot logs, all the leftovers, mostly 2x4s, you know, some 1-inch boards mixed in. I didn't know if I saw any 2x6. Yeah, so a bunch of 2x6s, a 2x8, 2x6. So yeah, so what I need to do is integrate that with the other mess I have at the house. So I'm all hooked up, ready to go. I will utilize some of my newly improved woods roads to get there rather than going out to the town road. I don't need to now. This and what I'm going to do next here, which I'm not going to record, is the primary reason I really want to get that pole barn with one end of it enclosed, so I can put my lumber, segregate it by product, length, dimensions. When it's dry without the stickers, it takes up a lot less room, and it's easy to get the stuff if I don't have to move piles, take stickers off to get the stuff I want, and then put it back together again. So I'm going to try to make, when I integrate this with my other piles of lumber, you know, just try to make it so I have, you know, a pile of 2x4s, pile of 2x6s, and not have things mixed together like this, which I have for the most part, but I have some stuff that I need to use buried in the middle, so it just means moving a lot of these piles. Really, this softwood takes really just a year, maybe just a season, a summer to dry. You know, maybe after 2 years you might sort of get the maximum dryness, sort of equilibrium with the atmosphere, but it doesn't have to sit that long. But some of my stuff has been stickered for 12 years. It does not need to sit that long to dry. Anyhow, enough yakking. So this ends the pasture spruce project, which started, I think, almost 2 years ago now with me cutting down my first pasture spruce logs. Most of it is white spruce as opposed to red spruce. And then you saw me loading it, you know, delivering to the lumber mill and back here again to pile. So that sort of concludes that. So the next use of this material is going to be building some sort of a cabin that'll be here. Cabin or two, probably for the use of like guest houses. I may rent it a little bit. So thanks for tagging along with this project. I appreciate it, and I hope you stay tuned for future videos. Thank you.